Welcome to the ESCP Live, our digital talk show where we bring together experts from the ESCP community and beyond to talk about the hot management and leadership trends of our time.
Thank you, Emily, for joining me to kick off this new program, ESCP Live.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for letting me come on here to talk with you about it.
Thank you, Emily. So in a couple of minutes, our guest stars will be joining us to answer a very interesting question. Have teams replaced individual talent as a new workplace superstars? But Emily, why is now the right time to discuss this topic?
Yeah, so through ESCP Live, our goal is to bring to life a lot of the questions and conversations we're having at ESCP all year round. And of course, what we're covering on ESCP's media, The Choice. And we felt that now is the right time to ask this question because, as is the case in many aspects of our work lives, the pandemic has given us some food for thought. It's accelerated transformations that were already in progress, and it's challenged what we thought was the norm in a lot of cases. And I'm sure many of those watching have seen the headlines the last few months. Titles like The Great Resignation, A War for Talent, and in some cases, The Big Quit. In short, people are leaving their posts for a wide variety of reasons, whether it's financial incentives or a new search for meaning. But what we're wondering is, and what we're here to ask, is how management is evolving and posing the question that is how we attract talent and actually what it might even mean to be a talent at a point of transformation. And so we're hoping to take a closer look at how that may be happening.
And this topic, do you usually address it at The Choice?
So we, as a business school, cover this topic constantly because it's at the core of what we do. You know, we train students to harness their inner talent, give them the tools to one day be talents, and hopefully also one day know how to get the best out of the talents that they're working with. On The Choice, it's also come up organically throughout many of the conversations we had. Of course, when we talk about continuous learning, I think a lot of the skills we might hear more about later, like interpersonal skills, were something that were really important to talk about. But I found that two of the topics that we regularly come back to where this understanding of talent versus, but also with teams and teamwork was the most prominent was in innovation and entrepreneurship. So just to give an example, in the case of innovation, we recently had an article from a professor of entrepreneurship at ESCP, Ranjia Jamin, who was making the case that now is the time to think of inclusive innovation. And it's the moment because innovation has been hindered, it's been challenged by the pandemic because we lost a lot of those serendipitous moments where it turns out that a lot of innovative ideas were born, talking with colleagues around the water cooler. And she makes the case that innovation in many cases is a lot about culture. And the second case is with entrepreneurs. So we've talked with plenty of entrepreneurs over the last year, as well as a wide variety of our professors of entrepreneurship on what the key success factors are. And while there's a certain spark or innate talent in an entrepreneur, a lot of what their success came down to was the team that they built and the diversity of team members and experiences they were able to surround themselves with so they could bring their project to life. And I know actually that you teach on entrepreneurship at ESCP.
I do, absolutely.
And you founded a few companies yourself. So has what I just said resonated with you?
Yes, I'm very lucky to be part of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Specialized Master degree here in Paris. And I work with students on a daily basis as they launch their projects. I'm an entrepreneur as well, and I have my own company. And it's true that at ESCP we value a lot the fact that there is no such a thing as succeeding alone when you are an entrepreneur. Because of course there are some solo founders, but very, very quickly you have to be surrounded by a team to succeed. And even more, the team has to be smarter than you to succeed. Because for a startup, the success is like 99% of execution.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true, every entrepreneurial journey is different, but what you just said definitely relates to a lot of what we heard from entrepreneurs over the last year.
Thank you very much, Emily, for your precious inputs. And now I'm really pleased to welcome our guest stars, Bournois and Alexandre Tissot. Hello, Frank. Hello, Alexandre. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daria, for launching this very special edition.
We are very, very pleased to have you with us today. So my first question is, when you hear the term talent, what does that mean exactly? So what would be your personal definition of the talent?
Shall I go? Or I think that the first time we all came across more or less the term talent was in the very early year 2000, 2001. At least it's a term that emerged after McKinsey released their book and report on the war, the talent war. But before that, there was, of course, in all organizations, the same need developing people further. And people didn't speak of talent, they were speaking of different things. They were talking about high potentials, hypos, high flyers, and then getting into the new millennial, the word talent emerged. But I think the basic needs are always the same.
And what do you think, Alexandre?
I think there is a switch at the moment on that word by itself. It used to be seen as a talent is young and very excellent, interpreted like that inside companies and organizations. And at the moment, I would say what is changing with digital tech companies is that talent is everyone. And that's a very big challenge regarding the difference of generation and everything about that. So talent is more and more associated, I would say, to people inside company and seeing everyone as a talent, which is a very, very big challenge for companies.
No, that's very true. I was just going to bounce back and saying that talent, as defined by Alexandre, is certainly a term which covers three dimensions to me. There is the notion of performance of the individual. There is, on top of that, the notion of potential. How much further can the person go? And there is the notion of company culture. And if you have those three, you are usually a talent in that given organization, because you can be very well a talent at company A, and the same person wouldn't be a talent at company B, because it's a mix of what you do well, what is it that you might do well in the future, and how much of corporate citizenship is there. And it's true in what Alex is saying that the digital new digital era is bringing something very new and different from the past.
Yes, so on this point, do you think this major transformation we are living, like digital, environmental, economic transformation, how do they impact the way companies manage talents today?
I think it's making things more difficult. In the past, I think that companies were looking at some key items about talented people. They were looking for vision. Are people able to go to the top and develop vision? Then they were looking for other elements like interpersonal skills. Are they able to drive a team and to make people happy inside the organization? They were also looking for people who had a big ability to adapting to an environment. And then, of course, they were looking for energy, drive, style, humility here or modesty there. But it was the notion. Now, with digital, I think it's bringing a lot of new things in terms of decision-making, shorter circuits, and it's bringing also, I think, this notion that Alexandre and I have investigated, which is the ecosystem. And that's very, very important, I feel.
Yes, we are sitting between two chairs at the moment. On one hand, we can see that we are still, and companies are still fighting for talents, seeing them as the best in the world in techniques, in technologies, and even now in methodologies like design thinking, all those things. And those people are still very attracted inside companies. The problem is maybe we often forget on that side the context of the company, as you just mentioned, Franck. The idea is that you are a talent, on my point of view, if you are completely adapted to the context you are living in and you deliver the right thing in the context that you are doing. And the second part, the other seat we are switching to, is living a little bit what we used to call performance as excellence inside a company, making the best, you see. I think this point of view is changing and going to be able to transform the company, which is no more doing the best, even doing the worst. You have to fail to transform also. So that changes a lot the way we think about talents and how we have to identify them, because we need some people taking risk, seizing opportunities, when before talents were maybe a little bit seen as the best in class of the system. But the problem now is that we want to change the system. So we do not have to stay with the talents the best in class. We need to have the one that are going for an adventure and changing the world.
That's very true. I like the notion of best in class. In previous days, companies would be looking for best in class reproduction. Those only who would be able to make it to the top. Now, as we are discussing, it's true that talent management has two sides. Talent identification, as you said, and talent development. And there are many new things. In the past, it was a specialized role for human resources directors. Then it became a managerial duty to grow talent. And now it's an association of the individual, the direct boss, and HR specialists, if not using tools and methodologies coming from the outside of the organization. Something also very different, I feel, is that with the concept of diversity spreading around in management a lot, we are no longer looking for talent that will be the people who will be in the top team in 10, 15 years. But it's also concerning middle managers and sometimes also experts who may one day become senior managers themselves.
We need to have really talents of the moment. And that's a change also, because there was something very prospective in looking at the talents, looking at the future, I would say, a leader of the company, hypot, as you said before, etc. I think today we need to have key leaders all around the company by itself, trying to push teams, and that will be a key word for the future for talent, team players, and very strong ones, making teams delivering at the same time what is required to be performant inside the company, because it's still there, but also the changes required to be still innovative in the world we are living in. We have to be very based on ambidexterity and to have both sides now, excellence and innovation. And that's a big challenge even for individuals. I think for people getting out schools today, it's not the same idea. You don't only need to know the frameworks, the methodologies, have a very good brain trained. You need also to be people that take risk, that moves, that have a vision, etc. And a real one, a concrete one. Not only saying we need to deliver a strategy. Really being, I would say, completely convinced about the things you are doing.
And what is important in a school like ESCP, of course, is that we have a lot of colleagues, a lot of members of staff who have been working and are making a lot of research pieces in association with companies. And that is very, very important, because I think that business schools now are going through a phase of quick obsolescence of concepts of management. So this notion of talent itself may be gone in 10, 15 years, but there will always be a need for people to be the best in organizations in terms of what they do, of how they think, and how they relate to the external environment. And it is really, somebody said before, a passion and an expertise at ESCP to grow those participants in executive education, grow students into great managers and, of course, great leaders of the future. And I've done personally a lot of this in many organizations, L'Oréal, Airbus, Bouygues, and other international companies. They need now a different type of relationships with business schools. And it's true that with digital technologies, with this phygital environment, physical and digital, we're going to be able to develop cohorts of students that, at the end of the day, will be coached, will be trained, will be developed as to become fine employees for their companies. And of course, we were speaking about talent identification. Then a big issue for organizations, especially in a time of fast economic development, is going to be the retention. But that's more on the company side of things.
And speaking of students, we have actually received a video of ESCP students. So guys, let me play that for you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sanders, a dual degree master's in management student from the University of South Carolina. And my question is, I've been reading the book called Range by David Epstein, and it explores the topic of why generalists triumph in a specialized world, using the examples of artists and athletes and inventors. And on a topic around skills development and talents, do you think it's more important to specialize in one area or have exposure to many different things?
So Alexandre, Franck, how do you respond to this question?
I think it's the difficulty is really to understand that both are required today. You need at the same time to have a global point of view and a local point of view. This is what we can call having a systemic approach of the companies, of the environment you are in. A few years ago, we made a study with Franck about the talents in digital world, etc. And we were really amazed to find people that are at the same time very global, have a very strong point of view about strategy, management, team working, processes in companies like finance, etc., business models, etc., and that are specialized on specific topics, sometimes technology, sometimes social sciences, etc. So I think you need to have both to be completely, I would say, involved in what you're doing and creating a strong performance by knowing what you're talking about and at the same time being able to project it globally inside the company. But you still have to not forget, that you can't be a specialist all your life. And that what you know at one time can change a few years after. So you really have to also learn to update your specialization and maybe create a completely new one in your life. And that's the idea today. You may be an expert on something one day and an expert on something 10 years after, because the environment, the ecosystem, as we mentioned before, has changed. And that you have followed this change.
Let me, say the same, but differently. Say the same because it's true that you need to have the two. And I think that what we are really striving at ESCP is to help students acquire this notion of having the two. If you have just a generalist approach, and if you're very good at, as I said, maybe being international, being good at studying adaptation, that's one thing. But at one point in time, you will plateau. You will plateau because you won't be differentiated and you will not have the specialized, attractive skills that your direct boss will be requiring. If you are too much of a specialist too early, and if you haven't got the basics, fundamentals of management of political games, right attitudes to develop, right networks to develop, you will be probably going fast. Yep. And at one point in time, there will be like a glass ceiling stopping you from going further up. So what is good maybe for Sarah, who asked the question, is that she has to know where she's very good at first and what she wants to start doing and where she's aware she is lacking maybe good qualities and attitudes. But I think we are saying exactly the same.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I have the impression when we talk about talent, we refer increasingly to some generic abilities such as resilience. So on a very practical way, how do we assess, how do we measure these abilities?
I'm quite radical on that topic.
Okay, interesting.
I do really think that you can't measure that by having a candidate coming for a job and say, oh, he's like that or he's like that. Even if you do some psychological tests, etc., I think you can't find it because that depends of the environment the candidate will be and and how he's going to be an employee, how he's going to deliver. So I think what we have to learn in companies is about trusting. It's about I feel it, and I feel that it's we have to try, in fact. And that's really a big change, because sometimes when we do recruitment in companies, we take a lot of time analyzing the talent, assessing, etc., doing many matrices. And when the talent is inside the company, finally we forget about everything about that, and he has to manage and sometimes struggles with the culture inside the company. I do feel when you go in tech companies, they look at the CV, and then after it's a question of trusting, it's a question of feeling between the manager and you, between the team and you, etc. And when they go after, very quickly they know if it will be long or very short. Because the question is not only the person, the question is the integration of the person inside the ecosystem. And I think sometimes we should go very, very faster than we are used to, do less analysis and move, because that's the key question of the world we are living today, not overthinking everything. And I think talent is something very animal, you know, in people. You feel it, you dare about it, and you want it inside your team.
That's true. What do you think, Frank?
To me, talent is situational. You can't self-declare yourself a talent, even if you are there, no doubt. You can't be a talent because you feel you are a talent. You are a talent because in some very specific given management situations, people who have seen you, people who have watched you, people that have debriefed about does he or she have the right attitude, does she or he have the right level of performance in that given situation, they say yes, this is absolutely appropriate and he or she did the right thing. So talent, clearly, yes, it has to do with a given situation, and if it's not only one situation that you are good, and it's a repetition of good behaviors and appropriate responses, then you will be considered as a talent by externals. It can be your boss, the boss of your boss, or even people who are experts outside your own organization. And this is how, in the late 40s, the notion of assessment center developed. During the military times, there were people who were trained to observe good talent, because at the end of the day, if people didn't respond properly, they would be killed. So it was vital that people would have the appropriate attitude. And this is how development centers started, with the commando teams, and then it was imported into organizations, and now it's being adapted, as Alex said, in the digital world. And just a word on this, because I very much like what you said. There is this notion of trust, very key. And there is another thing which I feel in tech is very important, especially relating to innovation. It's this notion of focus and persistence. And you remember, Alex, that it's very difficult to say, okay, am I going to work and work and work and be persistent? But maybe I'm wasting investment. I'm wasting monies of the company, and where should I stop? Or should I focus maybe earlier on something like this? So what is true is that the new digital world into which companies are now operating is showing that there is an emergence of new situations that are very specific to the new technological world. And I think this is just fascinating. I hope it's going to help Sarah build her talent path.
And I like what you usually say, talent is a bet. And we should not forget about that. A talent is a bet. You can manage the risk, assess many things, but at one point of the day, this is a bet between the company and the person. And the second part that is very important to have in mind is that there's no low performer. And that's also a key question. There are only bad situations for people. And one of the other problem, reversely, is sometimes you can be a talent coming from outside because you've got the strong diplomas, the good experiences, etc., and coming inside a company and be felt like a low performer at one time. That doesn't mean that you can't be a talent elsewhere. And that's going to be a big challenge for the company in the future. Stop thinking that people can be low performer and really work on other situations for them where they should stand, where they could express completely their talent inside the company. And you know, that's reverse thinking, because sometimes we feel like you say you're a talent, you are for life. You say you are a low performer, you are for life too. And that's what we have to change. Really understand that everything is so much moving that we need to continuously update our vision about management and about people. That's the same.
And I think that it may be worth talking about what I call talent emergencies. It's like a hospital.
Wow.
And when you've got emergencies, sometimes you have people who've been very, very good, brilliant for years. They've been seen by others as the best talent, and there is something that is going wrong. I've done this in executive education at ESCP and in many corporate universities. And I have seen that most of the time, talents derail. They go off the track for 2 or 3 very, very recurring situations. One, poor treatment of others. You may be very good, excellent at all the technical aspects, but if there is poor treatment of others, poor management of teams, that is very, very difficult for a talent. So that's very, very key. And then there is this big situation, which is, again, for students or people listening, there is also this question of lack of follow-through. People who are very volatile under pressure and all of this. And lastly, there is something that is also a problem with some talents. If you are disagreeing with your boss, that's very good, because you can be seen as bringing an extra input. You're a little bit of a rebel, but that's okay. But if you repeatedly disagree with the top management, then that is another way to derail as a talent. And sometimes also you have people who have delivered a lot, but they didn't go in the strategic direction that was required. So that's some avenues for talent derailment. And what I feel is very important for a talented person, it's to be aware of the strengths, to be aware of his or her weaknesses, but be also aware of which situations would take the person into derailment. Because when you start thinking about what's going to happen that will make you derail, then you can be much better staying for a long time a talent.
Very, very interesting. So the talent is not an absolute value?
No.
No.
It's always relative.
Very interesting. So, and before we conclude, we have chosen a very interesting illustration I would like to share with you and to ask you maybe the last question. Do you think it would be fair to say that today a great team trumps talent?
I would say that on my point of view, if I were in companies today, I would try to have the best teams more than have the best talents by themselves, because I think we know that we are at the moment in a big war of talents that has increased in the last months. I think what makes the delivery of a company and what makes the transformation of a company is a team, of course. And within a team, I'm going to be a little bit disruptive on the key of talent. I think one of the main questions that companies will have to address about the future of talent are blue collars. Because we are talking a lot, of course, about white collars, about people that are very well trained when they come to companies, very specialized. But inside the company, you have also a lot of people that have that know operationally, really basically and operationally the company, and that could be the talents for the future of the company. And that's going to be something very, very, very important, I think, for the transformation of the company. In the study we made together, we asked this question to a big panel of managers. Where are the talents that are going to transform the company? And basically, everyone said they are already there, they are already inside the company. There are two main problems. The first one is giving them the authorization to change the company, and that's a question for leadership. Authorize the change, authorize the transformation of the company. And the second part is that HR grades are no more adapted to the question of the ongoing transformation of the company. Because when you do an HR grade, you are categorizing what is, I would say, the strengths of your company today, not tomorrow. And that's also a huge problem we discussed a little bit before. Sometimes talents are people of the past. They are identified as the one succeeding in the past of the company, not succeeding in the future of the company. So we need to be a little bit radical, a little bit transgressive. I love this word. And I think HR has to change, leadership has to change, and talent by itself must be wider than we have used to do. No more only white collars, very well trained, coming from the best schools like ESCP also. Let's talk a little bit about blue collars and what they can go to.
Yes, I think this is, I cannot agree more on this notion of HR tools. I've got thousands of friends being HR directors and you know this area. However, HR people like to manage individuals because there is an HR file, they have a name, and there is a replacement, there is a successor, and there is a career development for that person. In fact, now more and more companies need talented teams. And it's not very frequent HR practice to manage the talent of teams rather than individual talent. So that is a very, very important question. And again, Alex was talking about a trajectory. And it's true that it's not because you've been a talent for many, many years that you will still be a talent tomorrow. And then it's bringing us back to derailment and, of course, corporate success.
So, Alexandre, Franck, thank you very much for joining us today for this very first episode, and thank you very much for your very valuable inputs. Thank you for joining us today, and please visit our website thechoice.escp.eu and feel free to subscribe to our bi-monthly newsletter. And stay tuned for the next episode, and take care.